Shalom uvracha. Today is Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, 3 days before Gimble Tammuz, the date of the passing, the yahrzeit of the Rebbe, the 27th passing. God willing, if you are able to visit the Ohel in the next few days, do so. I plan to spend Shabbat there, God willing, with thousands of others, as I do regularly. They provide a place and food and lodging, and it's a very holy experience. If you're able to go check it out, contact me, and I'll try to set you up there. So we're going to throw some Korach, Torah. This week's Torah portion is Korach. Korach was a rebel with or without a cause. He was Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader's cousin, and he ended up, after his rebellion, being swallowed up by the earth. Which, when was the last time you saw someone being swallowed up by the earth at the command of the person with whom he was disputing, when he said, "Earth, open up"? It wasn't a fun sight, probably, but it definitely is a lesson for us not to start up with the Moshe Rabbeinu. And every generation has its Moshe Rabbeinu. So, moving on. Korach the Torah describes in short the story that there was a rebellion. The Rebbe, we're going to share a thought from the Rebbe. The Rebbe talks about the details of Korach's questions and disputes with Moshe, and the Rebbe shows us how they apply to us in our day-to-day life today, here and now. I'm diving right in. So Korach asks 3 questions. I think if you look at them, we can categorize them. The theme can fall into individuality versus the general, the whole. And let's see how that goes. Number 1 was a question about Torah. The first question was about Torah. Korach said, we know there's a mitzvah to have a mezuzah on the door. A mezuzah is a small part of the Torah, a little portion. What happens if someone has the whole Torah in his home? Or not just the whole Torah as a scroll, but many, many books of the Torah, like most of us Jewish people have today. You can have hundreds, if not thousands, of Jewish books. Does that home still need a mezuzah? That little scroll on the door. Moshe Rabbeinu said, yes, it does. Korach laughed it off and said, why? If it's one little scroll on the door versus a whole bookshelves full, a whole home full of sefarim, why does it need a mezuzah? Next one was about mitzvot, the category of mitzvot. And he said, we know there's a mitzvah of tzitzis, of wearing fringes, strings, at the corners, the 4 corners of a 4-cornered garment. One of those strings has to be biblically techeles, has to be blue, sky blue. Today, I've got the tzitzis, but most people don't use the techeles today because we're not sure exactly what it is, if it's real, if we're getting it from the real source or not. But some people still do. So Korach asks, what happens if a person has a talis shekula techelet, a garment, a shawl, a talis that is all techelet? Does it still need to have that one string of blue techelet in it, as is commanded in the Torah? And said Moshe, yes, it does. Korach again laughed it off and said it doesn't make sense. If the whole thing is techeles, said techeles is the representative of the sky blue color, as you see here in Central Park here, what do you need that one extra string for? That little detail. It shouldn't count. It shouldn't matter. And then the next question was about leadership. Korach said every Jew is a holy soul. The lineage goes back to Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. Why do we need leaders? Why can't I rely on my own integrity and my own understanding and my lineage in this Torah that I learned, to know what to do the right thing? Who needs a Rebbe? Said Korach to Moshe. And some people say it today. Who needs a leader, a spiritual guide? So these are the three questions that Korach posed to Moshe Rabbeinu. The three answers he didn't like. And now the Rebbe takes these ideas and we're going to dissect them in our day-to-day life. What is the relevance to us? Says the Rebbe, going from the first one. Korach asked, if you have a house full of books, of holy books, why would you need a mezuzah? Says the Rebbe, a person often might have a house full of holy books, even a brain full of Torah. But they learned a lot of Torah, they memorized the whole Torah backwards and forwards. But the Torah didn't teach them anything. The Torah didn't change them, didn't permeate them. Says the Rebbe, it's not enough. It's not enough to have a bookshelf in your home or a bookshelf in your mind. The Torah needs to be a living Torah in which the mezuzah is the demonstration of that, where on your doorpost, on the front door, before anybody walks into your home from a distance, when someone looks at you or at your home, they say, here walks a Jew, here walks a living Torah. And in the mezuzah, it's written, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And that is actually an affirmation of our faith, in which we are ready to sacrifice our lives for God, if necessary, and definitely to dedicate our lives to God, hopefully without sacrifice. So says the Rebbe, that was Moshe's answer to Korach. It's not enough to be a Jew in the books on the shelf, or a Jew in the books in your mind, but there needs to be a demonstration that you're a willingness to give your life up for the Torah to teach you the way to live and to die if need. The next question, explains the Rebbe, was about the tzitzis, a talis. If someone has a shawl, a talis, says the Rebbe, that is completely blue, techeles, does it still need a tzitzis? Says the Rebbe, a shawl, this talis that we're talking about, is a garment that encompasses the whole body. There are various kinds of clothing. There's a kippah, covers the head, the shirt, the pants, the socks, etc. Each one takes care of one specific area, a detail of the body, but a talis encompasses the whole body. Korach's question really was, if a person has an overall good feeling towards Judaism, an overall dedication, I'm a Jew at heart, I feel Jewish, is that not enough? Is that not enough to function as a Jew? Do we really still need that one little blue thread in the tzitzis, in those strings? Are the details that important? Says the Rebbe, yes. No matter what the overall feeling to Judaism is, it's the details that count. It's that little actions. It's the way we eat with a bracha, kosher food, the way we sleep, the way we work with integrity and honesty, etc., etc. Those are the details that count. And that is what Moshe answered to him. That blue techeles, that blue string representing God in the details, needs to be in every detail in our lives, not just in our overall Rosh Hashanah commitment to be a better Jew, etc. Or even not even the Moda'ani that we wake up in the morning and say, Moda'ani lefanachai, commit myself, God. I acknowledge that you are the animator of this world. That's not enough. It needs to manifest in the details. Finally, the third question Korach asked was about leadership. Why is it, if we are all kol ha'eda, kulam kedoshim, if the whole nation are holy, is holy, madua tisnatsu al kal Hashem, why are you elevating yourself? Who needs leaders? We don't need any leadership. Said Moshe, sounds like a good idea, but God instilled in every generation the Moshe Rabbeinu, a spiritual guide, a spiritual leader who knows the souls of the generation, who understands them, understands their struggles, and understands the obstacles, the tests that God presents to each and every person in order to provide them opportunities from which to grow stronger. Says the Rebbe, this Moshe was given this divine wisdom to understand and be able to help a person. And people on their own, says the Rebbe, are not trusted enough to know what to do at all times. They need a spiritual guide. As the Rebbe quoted the Talmud, it says, Al-Kol, or the biblical, the scripture, Al-Kol Kishaim Tichaseh Ahava, on all transgressions and all evil things that we do, our love covers. Our love, our self-love obscures the truth, obscures our self-critique, our inner critique. We don't criticize ourselves generally as much as we criticize others who do the same thing. Says the Rebbe, that's why you need a spiritual guide and leader. And finally, we have a Rebbe today who left us, who's here in spirit and left us a lot of advice. There are hundreds of thousands of letters from the Rebbe to individuals like me and you that cover almost everything that could happen in their relationship with God. We can look in them and find our solutions. Finally, to wrap this up with what the Rebbe ended off this specific talk with, the Rebbe said that it was actually the woman in the story who are the unspoken heroes and opposite in the story of Korach and his dispute, because the Midrash tells us that it was actually Korach's wife who inspired and egged him on to go against Moshe, to rebel. And then there was another person who was in that party of Korach. His name was On ben Peles, and he was from the tribe of Reuven, and he was part of that group. But his wife, On's wife, talked him out of it and convinced him to leave the dispute, and thus saved his life and also inspired him for good. So says the Rebbe, it's the woman who actually carry the key in these three questions, in these three rebellions that Korach presented to Moshe. In the Torah one, that the Torah needs to be not only in the home on the shelf or in your mind on the shelf, but to actually have an influence on you personally. And the Mitzvot one, that not only, it's not enough to have an overall talis that is blue, an overall feeling of connection to God, but the details are important. That little blue thread, the tiniest blue thread, is important. And also an area of leadership that we all need to reach out to our leaders, to our spiritual guides, to find out what is the right thing to do. Says the Rebbe, the woman, the wives, the mothers, the sisters are the ones with the key to enable their husbands, brothers, and sons to do the right thing. God bless you. Hope to see you at the Ohel, or be there when you can sometime in the next few hours, days. Take care.